So hi everyone, welcome back to a Monday More Yourself episode. I'm Kate Moore Youssef here, as always on the ADHD Women's Wellbeing podcast. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. Over the past few months, I have been a guest on other people's podcasts and I love doing this. First of all, I love meeting new people. I love chatting to different people, but I also love being able to share what I know about ADHD and I guess the support and the guidance and all my insights and personal experience, which sometimes I don't get to do on the ADHD Women's Wellbeing podcast because I'm so interested in what my guests have got to say. But as you know, I do like to have a little waffle on there anyway. And so today I'm going to be sharing with you a conversation I had on the Limited Time Only podcast. And it's a fantastic podcast. I really loved speaking to Esther Stanford and Susie Riddell, who are the podcast hosts. And if you've not listened to the Limited Time Only podcast, I'd highly recommend it. It's like this sort of fun mix of chat and comedy and sketches and interviews. And they have a lovely sort of like chin wag. It kind of feels like you're having like a chat with them over a cup of tea. And it's brilliantly produced. And I was really happy to be on there. I was really honoured to be chatting to them. And Susie is also on the Archers. Now, I don't listen to the Archers, but it's an institution and that is very cool. But if you're not listening in the UK and you don't know what the Archers is, please don't worry. But it's a BBC drama, I think you'd call it, that's been going on for years and years and years and years. And so that was just super exciting. And it was great to be a guest. It was great to speak to them and really break down some stuff that I think sometimes I'm still processing as well. So in this episode, Esther, Susie and myself talked about lots of different things. And I think this is why I wanted to share it with you, because maybe it's some kind of topics that we don't touch so much on the podcast. And really sort of going down to more granular level of what ADHD looks like in women and girls and how it can look so different and why it's so often missed and why getting an ADHD diagnosis can bring both difficult emotions, grief and all sorts, but also a sense of relief. And we also touch on the conversation of sensory sensitivities and our limited social batteries, how that can affect our daily life, something that I definitely experience, and how to spot the early signs of burnout so we can protect our energy with better boundaries, decompression and downtime. And finally, we talk about just some simple habits like spending time outdoors, moving our body and breathing exercises to help regulate our nervous systems. So I really hope you enjoyed this conversation with the ladies from the Limited Time Only podcast. Here it is, and I will speak to you all very soon.
I love your podcast, by the way.
Thank you.
I've been listening to it for ages, and so it is a bit weird.
Making a celeb.
I know, but it is
no
that weird thing of hearing someone's voice. And yeah, often when I'm jogging, actually, I listen to it when I'm jogging a lot.
Oh, that's good. It's nice to know that is motivating enough for you to listen to it while you're jogging.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
You were diagnosed at 40.
Yes.
What did your life look like growing up and what led to that diagnosis?
Yeah. So my life looked like undiagnosed ADHD, but I didn't know what that was. So I would just constantly question myself all the time. Why do I do this? Why do I hyper-focus and then become disinterested? Why am I flaky? Why am I disorganized? Why can't I finish anything? Why is that such a struggle for me, but something else I can do with my eyes closed? Like my husband he had no answers for me either, but I just wanted him to be like, oh, it's because you're this, or it's because it's that. And I literally couldn't answer it. And the weird thing is that I've got two brothers with ADHD and they were diagnosed when they were kids. And so for me, it was just I never really thought I had ADHD because it didn't look like my brothers. And I wasn't outwardly hyperactive, even though it is quite obvious that I can't really sit still. I don't like sitting in one place. I'm quite restless. I'm much better moving around, all of that. But I just wasn't bouncing off the walls. So ADHD just wasn't considered before I'd even looked at it. And the reason why I was looking at it was because one of my daughters, and it was in the middle of the pandemic and I was homeschooling and she was 9 years old and she'd already been struggling at school anyway, but very similar to me. She was, really well behaved, respectful to teachers, no issue sort of with behavior or friendships at that time. And she just couldn't sit on a chair. She couldn't process the information. She got very overwhelmed very quickly. We were looking at things like dyslexia and dyscalculia already and dyspraxia. So there was already this mix of things that we were looking at, but we were not getting any answers. And it was when I was homeschooling and myself, and both of us trying to sit on a chair, me trying not to lose my rag with her, me trying to be as tolerant and patient as possible, not easy, and her just wanting to not be anywhere in front of, a comprehension or a computer, and not even be wanting to sit on a chair. And I was like, what is going on here? So I just Googled, this is way before AI, but I was like putting all the symptoms and all the things in. And it just kind of came back of like symptoms of girls, with ADHD. And it was, pretty much, tick, tick, tick. Again, every profile is quite different, but her ADHD looked very similar to how I then remembered myself with ADHD, who was quite happy, sort of just pootling around and daydreaming and being outside and not liking pressure and just wanting to sort of do their own thing. And it just made so much sense there and then. It was like, okay, right, we need to go for an assessment for my daughter, and I need to go for an assessment as well. And then that was back in 2020. And we both had our, assessments and diagnoses within 2 or 3 weeks of each other. And and that was the very beginning. And that was the end of 2020, around November. And from 2021 onwards, I started the podcast. And that was purely because I needed someone to answer questions that no one could answer before. And that was when there were so many dots being connected, like it was constellation. It was like we're looking up in the sky and like suddenly being able to, oh, now I understand about my grandpa, and I understand about that mum, and I understand about that person. And it was just a constant understanding and reflection, and then being able to put things right. Okay, we've got some answers now. Let's start changing things and putting things into perspective, and looking at tools and ways and strategies and self-compassion and all the things that none of us were operating from. So yeah, that was kind of where it all began.
Because girls weren't ever thought to have ADHD, weren't they? Because like you say, they present so differently, and I constantly hear, oh, it's an epidemic and everybody's being diagnosed and everybody's got flipping ADHD now. And Susie and I have had many discussions about this, because I have a lot of neurodiversity in my family. And I've asked my daughter if she's okay with this, but my daughter has autism and dyslexia. But I struggle to say that because you wouldn't know she has autism if you met her. She is very social, but she has a very low battery. But it's like the volume in her body's being turned up. So she's very sensitive to noise. And she can hear the ticking of the clock in the corner of the room. And it's weird, isn't it, how those sort of labels, like I don't like saying she has autism because people, particularly of a certain generation, have an idea of what that looks like, and I don't want her to be held back by what that opinion might be, and it doesn't sum her up, but she does have it, and it is important to know and to recognize and then to put those boundaries in place. When you were diagnosed with ADHD, what did you feel?
Interestingly, it was shame, it was stigma, there was taboo. I didn't want to talk about it. Again, this is 6 years ago nearly. No one was talking about ADHD in women and girls. I felt like it was like this thing to be ashamed of, and people would, exactly the same way as you, look at it through this lens of, oh, she's chaotic, she's a shit show, she can't get her act together, she's obviously very disorganized and messy. And it was just like every negative narrative that I would think about ADHD and that has been put out there in the media and has been sort of perpetuated in conversations about like bad parenting and all these different things. And I was thinking, I don't want to admit to this because this is showing everybody that I'm not coping with life. So it took me a really long time. And that wasn't, a part of me was like, I'm going to come out, I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to launch this podcast, and then this huge vulnerability came out. And I was thinking, oh my God, I just want to hide away and not talk about this. So I was kind of navigating two things of wanting to start the podcast and find out all the answers and have these conversations and get curious with incredible experts for not only myself, but for so many other women navigating what I knew, because I've been reading all the Facebook posts and all just different communities and things like that. There was just so many women out there who were just lost and struggling as well. Also navigating shame, also navigating, well, what does this mean? Is this it? Am I doomed for the rest of my life? And I understand what you're saying about your daughter, because you don't want her to sort of be, and I'm saying this in inverted commas, like labeled.
Yeah.
But sadly, autism has just been put in one box of, again, generalization, like Rain Man or this or that. If you're autistic, then you have to tick these boxes and you have to show up like this. And we understand it's a spectrum. And I wonder about language, and I wonder how different it would be if there was different ways of sort of discussing things about sensitivities or processing or just all different ways. But just to say my daughter's autistic, straight away I understand people who think, oh, she's not sociable and she's not able to, hold on a conversation and she's not able to do X, Y, and Z. And that's just wrong. But we've got to find a way for people to understand themselves without the shame, without thinking that they're having put labels on them, but also so they can feel relaxed, authentic, calm with who they are, how they show up in the world, what choices they make. And I've got a daughter very similar to you. And she's not been diagnosed with autism. She's been diagnosed with ADHD. But a lot of the traits are what we would say are autistic in girls. But she is like the life and soul of the party. She's hilarious. She's got amazing friends. But her social battery, like when she needs to just go to bed, she needs to go to bed. Noise, people, smells. But why should there be so much shame and stigma around that?
Yeah, I agree. I read, I don't know if you've read it, but I read Miranda Hart's book about her having Lyme's disease, but also recognizing that she is a highly sensitive person. She has a limited social battery. So yes, she can be fun, and yes, she pushes through things. And that really resonated with me, the highly sensitive person thing, because, well, I mean, it's been mooted to both me and Suze that were ADHD, and actually last year I used ChatGPT for something, and then I had quite a long conversation with ChatGPT about something, and then I asked it something at the end, and we were on holiday, and I said, "Do you think I might be neurodiverse?" And ChatGPT said to me, "With the greatest of respect and sensitivity, I suspect you're ADHD. I think you probably have traits of both."
Wow.
And I burst into tears, because it was this feeling of, oh God, my life kind of makes sense. How I operate kind of makes sense. There's often, like, I don't know if this is quite the right word, but comorbidities with, I have Hashimoto's hypothyroidism.
Yeah.
That often goes hand in hand with it, because it's the sensitivity to the world. So it's like a great skill, because you pick up on everything in the room, and I'm noticing everybody's micro expressions, and I can process really quickly. But then if you ask me to do something, it's almost too much. And I think, like you say, where's she gone? I think, like you say, like the label of being you're autistic or you're ADHD, it sort of it presents something outwardly initially, and then people build up this sort of image. And so with the Miranda Hart book, I really like the idea of sort of identifying as a highly sensitive person. Felt gentler, but you're right. I don't know if you watched the Chris Packham documentary about autism, and he said, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, because there's so much range in that. And I think so the work you're doing is so brilliant in that you're pushing that conversation out there, because when I think that I might be neurodiverse, I feel quite emotional about it. I feel a lot of grief. And the word I actually wrote down was shame, which is what and I wouldn't judge anybody else for it.
Yeah.
But this internal thing, like family members, oh, bloody ADHD, everyone. It's those voices, aren't they? So you think, I don't want to speak up about this. I don't want to tell anybody.
Yeah. And I wonder if the whole COVID thing, exacerbated things for people as well. Yes, there's the idea of the shame, but also that ability to then actually, it's kind of, if you do get a diagnosis, you can step into your life more fully in a way, because you understand yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we do, like both of you are sort of alluding to the fact that there's fear of judgment and what people say. And again, it sort of like comes back to, oh, well, you can't have ADHD. And, with respect to our parents' generation, they may not go into the amount of detail that we've gone into of research and understanding. And, many of us are on social media, are listening to podcasts, we're able to understand the nuances, and they sort of skim it. I'm not saying anyone's a Daily Mail reader, but very often there will be sort of more negative connotations in that in the Daily Mail of that ilk, where it is like it's overdiagnosis, it's a pandemic. They want to put everyone on like stimulants, and they're not understanding the women's identity and experience, lifelong experience of the internalization of of feeling like we have to behave or mask in a certain way or show up in a certain way or have relationships, friendships, communicate. We've never been given an alternative before. And I think, Susie, what you said about COVID, that was the only time we've ever had a pause button in life. And that pause button allowed a lot of people to reflect, to be at home, to breathe. And it was like an emergence as well of the conversation around neurodivergence. So it was kind of like this collision of internal and external kind of like, whatever you want to call it, introspection or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
So we were able to be given that opportunity to say, well, what if, this is who I am? And we are able to know what we're sensitive to and what we like and what we don't like, what we've masked, what we've internalized. Like no one can take that away from us. And I've only just begun to be more honest about it, talking about things. Even the other day, we were talking about spray deodorant and roll on deodorant and smells. And normally with family members who'd be very dismissive about anything like that, like, oh, just get on with it. Stop being so precious. Stop being so sensitive. And there was a conversation around, oh, I can't bear perfume and I can't bear this. And I can't bear being in a room where there's no windows open. And I try and drop these little nuggets of, that's, sensory processing. That's understanding what inflames your nervous system and makes you go into that sort of like very hypervigilant stress, sympathetic state in your body, which causes all this inflammatory stuff, which is why we understand things like autoimmune conditions, gut issues, thyroid issues, more mental health issues. It's all an inflammatory response to not feeling safe in our bodies in the external world. So that is why it's so important to discuss all the different connections, because when you understand yourself and when you know what those triggers are, you are then able to prepare yourself. And you can't put yourself in this cotton wool, and you can't put yourself in a place where it's like, I'm not going to, put myself in any situation. Like we do have to live in this world if you want to, show up and work and parent and all of that. But we're allowed to make different choices or protect ourselves so our nervous systems can feel safe, and we can control that safety now when we know what's going to trigger it.
Because it's extra hard for parents, isn't it? Because you're having to, you want to protect yourself, but I mean, I know it should be that you put yourself first, but we all put our children first, without thinking. So you're protecting, you're in this protection mode, possibly way more than somebody who is neurotypical might.
And that's exhausting.
Be. Yes. And that the exhaustion thing, I find this is where sort of at the moment I'm really trying to zone in on that personally. Because I know that I've always needed a nap since I remember being at university and needing naps and probably not thinking it was that weird. But as I've gone through life, I've thought, well, I've always been the sort of person I need to have a power nap. And it's only now that I go, well, that's probably why. And this idea that you're either, your window's either open or shut. And it's either one or the other. And I have, my naps are getting longer and longer.
Ooh, amazing.
But I now don't berate myself for needing to go to sleep in the middle of the day, because I know there is no point in just keep going and pushing through, because nothing's gonna get done.
I think that's the thing, isn't it, with once you start to understand these things about yourself, you give yourself permission to then have these experiences. When you were
Yes.
talking about COVID, I remember the first day everybody left the house for the first time, and I was on my own for the first time in 2 years. I sat on the kitchen floor in my pajamas. I had all these things I was going to achieve that day. And I stayed in my pajamas and I sat on the kitchen floor in front of the island on the floor, and I cried for 3 hours. And somebody said to me, I told somebody about it, and they were like, "What the hell's wrong with you?" And it took me a while to understand it was about, I just didn't have any stimulation for the first time in 2 years. There was no one else in the house, and it was a release. I felt joy. I just was sobbing, and it was just felt like it needed to come out of me. And I wasn't sad. It just was just stuff that needs to come out. But now I kind of understand that, and sometimes I'll say I have to get out of the house. I need to,
Yeah.
because my husband works. You don't understand. We even turned a fourth bedroom into 2 rooms so that I could have my own space. But sometimes my husband working next door, the noise aggravates me. But now I get that that's probably just the way I'm made, and that's okay.
Yes.
So there's sort of, I think sometimes maybe the grief that this is around it is, it's okay as well. It's sort of like it's almost like permission, and that's part of the tears as
Yeah.
well.
100%. Yeah. So many women feel like that. It's this permission slip to finally be who we are. It's not like
Yes.
we're creating someone new. It's not like this persona that suddenly just comes out. It's always who we've been. But we've been stifling it, repressing it, pushing it down, not allowing it, which is why, again, we see so many women, especially with things like chronic fatigue, chronic pain, go back to all the inflammatory autoimmune conditions. I'm not saying everything is caused, but, there's a much higher proportion of women suffering with physical and hormonal health conditions when you're neurodivergent, because
Yes.
if you think about just constantly being repressed and pushing down and not being able to be who you are, and it's so great to hear that you have always lent into those naps, those knowing that you need them. But a lot of women have not maybe had that self-awareness or that self-understanding, or maybe have had like belief systems or conditionings from family members going, that's lazy. Lazy people nap during the day. Come on, keep going, keep pushing. And so if you've had that sort of like dialogue in your head to push through and not nap, then yes, there's going to be something going on physically for you, and that is what we see. It's this permission slip for women to kind of just go, oh, okay, so I can breathe. It's okay to say no to that arrangement. It's okay to maybe offer another alternative than sitting in a noisy, smelly restaurant. It's okay for me to ask to work from home for a couple of days a week. And that is what women have never had before. They've never had the permission.
Yeah.
What is it about the being a bit older and hitting perimenopause, menopause? What's the link?
The hormone link for me has been sort of like the foundation of my work. And, within a few weeks of the podcast starting in 2021, I was asking the questions, and I found one woman, one amazing doctor, Dr. Wasserstein, who was based in New York, who was at the time probably in her late 60s. And she was pretty much the only expert who was making that connection between neurodivergence, ADHD, and hormones, and the fluctuating hormones, especially around perimenopause. And what we know, and what we're learning so much more, thank goodness, over the past few years, is that, cyclically, we have fluctuations, but they're more extreme for neurodivergent women, which is why much higher percentage struggle with PMDD and postnatal depression. We still don't understand, there's still not enough research as to why those fluctuations are more extreme. But then if we are working in and I don't want to call it a deficit, but a dopamine dysregulation already, and the estrogen is sort of like the feedback to the dopamine and the serotonin. We're working on women who are experiencing fluctuating mood, energy, motivation, connection, all of those things, and not understanding why they can't trust themselves. So then we've got that cyclically that comes from puberty, and most neurodivergent women will have had an understanding of how maybe their hormones have affected them throughout their life. Perimenopause kicks in. traits come sooner, traits come harder than neurotypical women. So you could be already experiencing those perimenopausal symptoms from your late 30s, 38, 39, very slowly, to a point where you keep gaslighting yourself and thinking, no, there's no way I'm perimenopause, I'm too young, I'm too young. And then they sort of just ramp up. And most of the time we push through until we can't push through anymore. And that's when you see most women in their mid-40s uncovering this perimenopausal ADHD, autistic kind of Pandora's box of all the things that they kind of have been experiencing, but it's like a low level hum. And this is just like full blown kind of like orchestra that's just like hitting you from all places. And I thought I was in perimenopause a few years ago. I know I started like probably 39, 40. I feel horrendous now with my perimenopause. And I was quite smug about my HRT and managing it and everything. And now I've hit another roller coaster where my sleep is nowhere as good as it used to be, mood. I never know when my period's coming. And it's really, really hard. And so we have to understand that our hormones are those like scaffolding and the things that hold things together. And then when we can't quite rely on the hormones being there when we kind of think they're going to be there, or the holding us just tight enough to kind of mask the ADHD, when they're not there and they're kind of all over the place, our ADHD just kind of comes out in full pelt and just like hits us over the head here, there, and everywhere, whether it's to do with our cognition, relationships, career, physical health, libido, like it's all there. It's amplified with neurodivergence. So yeah, it's one of the reasons why so many women in midlife I kind of suspected there was something going on all my life, but my God, perimenopause has like ripped it all open for me.
Yeah, and it really is like a roller coaster, isn't it? It's like a horrendous one.
Absolutely.
Really.
Absolutely. And it's weird. And actually, the knowledge is the power, isn't it? Because you saying all that, I go, oh, yeah. Like last week, Susie and I went down to London. We were very lovely. We were up for an award for this podcast. And I was saying to Susie, I don't feel like I've got any words in my head. I don't feel like I can string a sentence together. I don't feel like I feel incredibly boring and dull. I don't feel like I've got any. She's like, that's not what's coming across. But my God, I had to work hard.
Yes,
but
exactly.
Funny, I had to work so much harder. And I think once you understand that, and the last few years since I was about 38, I've had to have like a couple of Sundays a month where I just sleep for about 15 hours a day. And it's mad. I literally just can't stay awake. But I went at the loft actually earlier to get something, and I found my school report from, well, it says year 2. That would be middle school. So that would probably be year 6, 7. And I read through it. Oh my God. Esther is a bit of a dreamer, but when she concentrates, she can do some good work. And then another one, she's really clever, but she just doesn't retain anything for exams. I was like, oh my God, it's all there. And that kind of, if you'd have known at the time, but we didn't have that knowledge in the 80s, which is why, as I say, the work you do is so fascinating and so important, so that it does reduce that shame, increases that knowledge. I read Dr. Gabor Maté's book a few years ago. And obviously he talks about trauma being one of the triggers for ADHD. What are your thoughts on that? No. Okay.
Interestingly, I put a post up today, literally on that. So he's done very good work in lots of different areas for mental health. However, I categorically do not align with his beliefs or theories that ADHD is caused by trauma. What and you'll see in the post that I put up was it's ADHD and trauma are interlinked. Because for women especially, but boys and men as well, if you've not had an understanding of who you are and no one's articulated it to you, and you've not had validation, and you've not been able to understand what drives you, how your brain works, how your nervous system works, then you're going to be operating as in a different, like, alternate universe, and not even, you're sort of showing up as one version, but the world's meeting you as another version. And of course there's going to be trauma. And then we understand with girls and women, especially, many ADHD girls find themselves in vulnerable situations. There has been times where they've been people pleasing or trying to fit in and maybe making impulsive decisions or making decisions that have just been because they wanted people to like them. We know that sexual trauma as well is higher in neurodivergent girls, addiction, disordered eating, OCD, depression. There's no way trauma can be not in the mix here. So a huge part of my work is educating awareness, trying to help people understand, because we don't want that 5-6-year-old version of who all we were. We want to see these girls going, oh, okay, I understand myself. Even today, this morning, I've got an 11-year-old daughter, and she never ever does this. She woke me up in the middle of the night last night. It was like 1 a.m, and she's also diagnosed. I can't sleep, and I could see her getting all panicked and all worked up. And I got her back to bed and told her it doesn't matter, not to worry about sleep, and it's all fine, and we'll wake up when we wake up. And I didn't wake her up until about 8:30, 9 o'clock. Took her into school late, and I said to her, sweetheart, you do know maybe why you struggled last night to fall asleep. And she said, well, my legs were hurting and She played a lot of sport. She didn't have any downtime yesterday. She had a few play dates and she went to something else. And I said, remember what you did yesterday? There was no decompression time. And normally she has time just to chill and do nothing. And yesterday was just one of those days where she went from one thing to another thing to another and then went to bed. And I said, now you understand, with ADHD, we need a lot of downtime. We need decompression time. She played a lot of sport. I said, did you put your magnesium spray in your legs, which is like a little ritual and just like helps her calm down? She goes, no, I forgot. I said, little things like that. And you're able to understand how much your nervous system just needed. And maybe you went to bed and you were a bit more heightened than usual. And that's probably why maybe you woke up in the middle of the night and it's all fine. And then tonight we're going to go to bed early, both you and I, because now I'm tired. And we're going to go to bed early and have a good night's sleep tonight. And that difference between not understanding and thinking there's something wrong, and she was spiraling and not being able to reflect back and see how her day then led onto her night. And we see this with burnout in women, that when they're able to understand it, they're able to look back over the past 3 months that contributed to their burnout. And then we go, right, okay, well, how do we prevent this from happening? How can we start putting in more buffers, more boundaries, more time for decompression, more time for nature, movement, breathwork, anything like that? But when you don't have it, then of course you're just going to be in this kind of consistent spiral and then questioning why you can't cope with life.
Yes.
Because many girls would be able to have coped with her day. Many
Yes.
girls could have, would have been able to bounce from one thing to another, and then just collapse into bed and fall asleep. She's just not one of those girls.
No, and I think knowing that takes the pressure off, because I know in my own life I've thought, oh, come on, why can't you? Why can't you? And then I'm flawed, and I've had these days when I've gone to my husband, I can't think how to type, and don't show me a screen. And I've literally had to just go and lie in darkness and not move, because my body, it's like a foot's gone on the accelerator and I can't get it off, and I'm stuck and I can't get it off. And I think understanding how your system works is so key. And I think we're so bombarded with, you must get so many hours sleep, you must do this, that then that can eat. I can't sleep. Well, then that's going to knock on. Doesn't matter. You holding her and going, doesn't matter, is so important. Like, that's fine, we'll catch up tomorrow. We don't have to do it in this way. How key do you think? Well, this is probably a 2-part question, because we've had Hannah Miller on this podcast a couple of times, and I actually went to school with Hannah, and I found she does, for people who haven't heard the episode, she does something called the Clifton Strengths Test, and you find out what your strengths are, your natural strengths, and then the things that you're not so strong at. And I think about that every day, because it was so illuminating to me. And my bottom 2 were discipline and consistency. And she said, to be honest, you fit quite highly with ADHD, but it's made me reframe how I live my life, and it's really helped how I structure my days, how I structure my work, what I say yes and no to. how important do you think it is to know what your boundaries are and set these practices, but also to have a purpose and create your world in a way that fits you?
Yeah. Listen, so much of it does come from a place of privilege. A lot of women I speak to want to set these boundaries and want to have buffers and want to have time and to breathe and all of that, and it's just not possible.
Yeah.
However, I believe that everything is, we can shift and evolve even in tiny, small ways. And so even if you think there's absolutely no movement, there is always movement. And even if it's a 5 minutes here or an hour there, it is all accumulative, and we have to make our lives sustainable, because many of us with ADHD have a big purpose or want to live with purpose and want to live a fulfilling life and want to live like life is colorful and full of creativity and joy and connection. But that's also quite exhausting as well. And I think what you said about Miranda Hart and obviously how she talks, she looks like a big ball of amazing energy, and she obviously gives a huge amount, but then has to retreat. And so we see that a lot. We see, and even me, I show up and I'll do this podcast and I'll do another podcast, but then I will be good for nothing. My husband, poor guy, comes home from work and he'll want to talk to me, and I won't have a huge amount in the tank. I really have to reserve that. And I probably reserve it for my kids. I have to find ways to recharge my battery. And that is often going for a walk quietly on my own in nature with my dog, or having a bath, or just having time just to breathe, a car journey or something like that. Because when you want to give a lot and you really are very passionate about things that you do, you can't do that all the time. So there has to be boundaries. And you have to be really strict with those boundaries. And in my book, I've got a chapter all about burnout. And so much of it is about being on prevention, is being in prevention mode and understanding what the triggers are, what lights you up, what expands you, but also what kind of depletes you, the people, the situations, where you've been people pleasing and saying yes, and what are the reasons for that. What validation, external validation, are you looking for, and what are you able to let go of now? And coming back to the menopausal thing, in a way, it is great that we are going through this, even though it's painful and awful with the sleep and the sweating and the mood swings and all of that. It's stripping away all this kind of like good girl stuff, this identity that we've been told that we've got to show up and constantly be performing for other people. And I just don't have the energy anymore. I don't have the energy. And so I really have to just pick and choose and be like, no, that person that I used to make an effort for, can't be bothered with. If I'm going to socialize, I'm going to socialize and just see those friends that really, really like me. I don't have the energy to make conversation with other people. So I'm being a lot more refined with my work. In my work, I'm being more kind of really picking and choosing what is worthwhile for my business, worthwhile for me, and trying to be as present as possible for the people that really do matter to me now. And sadly, things do fall by the wayside a little bit. We can't do and be everything to all people and all things anymore. And it takes some women aren't ready to hear that. Some women are like, no, this is my identity. I do things, I help people, I show up, I'm there, I'm the person that organizes, I'm the person that gets everybody together. And they're the people that are also going to bed with migraines, and they're the people that are falling apart internally and can't talk about it. And we have to make a choice. It can't be, maybe in our 20s, maybe in our 30s, we're able to do it. But I don't think with perimenopause colliding with this understanding of our neurodivergence, we can show up as that person anymore.
Yeah. There's something quite powerful about it, actually, isn't there? Because I do lots of different things, but I was offered a job 3 times actually over the last couple of months, and I just said no. I know that's actually going to take too much from me. And then last year I was running a weekly acting group, but the way it had been set up, I'd followed on from somebody else who'd run one, and it was every Monday, even bank holidays. And I got to November and I was having December off, and then as soon as I stopped, I was like, I'm absolutely exhausted. I literally haven't had, because you're thinking about it every week. I think I had 2 weeks holiday, and someone covered, but you can't stop. And as soon as I had Christmas, I was like, I can't do that anymore. It takes too much from me, and there's no space for this to grow or to work on other projects. So I'm going to have to say no, and I'm in the position that I can do that. But years ago, I would have taken a long time to make that decision. But now I understand myself a lot better, that there's nothing wrong with me. I've got many gifts and I have limits, and my limits look different to other people's. It was quite empowering to go, do you know what? This doesn't fit for me. And I'm going to have to say, I love these people, but I'm going to have to say no to this. So there's something I feel very emotional about the whole thing, that I probably am neurodiverse. And a lot of people in my family have had diagnoses in the last few years, both sides of my family. And so there's something quite emotional about it, but there's also something sort of like, I feel like a bit of a chrysalis, and my new wings are about to pop out, and I'm going to be a complete fucking badass.
You already are, Esther. Come on.
I'm going to be like Samantha Jones from Sex and the City, or Miriam Margolyes. I'm just going to be, no, I'm not doing that, but I'm going to be kind, but I'm also going to be like, no, that doesn't fit. And also, I'm pushing 50. We don't know how many years we have. Let's just get on with the stuff. So there is something quite stripping away those layers of, people pleasing and being ingratiating and all those skills.
Yeah.
So there's something quite freeing about that, isn't there?
Yeah, it's very empowering.
Yeah.
To know our capacity and to know our bandwidth is
Yeah.
very, very empowering, because like you say, you can't be on the whole time. And to know, again, I think, with ADHD especially, we like to have autonomy, we like to have freedom, flexibility, and then to be contained in, say, the acting class. And your brain, you're going to want to deliver. So every Monday night, you want to do, make sure that it's the best it can be. A bit of perfectionism going on there. So your brain's always going to be on. Your nervous system is going to know every Monday night, I've got to be there. Da, da, da. So it's this combination. And even just removing that one thing, your nervous system will just be like, oh, okay, so I can breathe now.
Yeah.
But that version of you, maybe a decade ago or 5 years ago or something, would have been like, oh, I'm going to let everybody down. It's going to be awful. I'm going to ruin everyone's lives. It's going to be the worst thing that I've ever done. And we create this kind of like narrative that we're just going to be the most awful person in the world. And I'm sure people may have been a bit disappointed, but I don't think you probably would have ruined anyone's life. And I'm sure they probably found someone else to fill in. But we overthink, we kind of, put so much pressure on ourselves. I'm in a similar situation with something at the moment with work, and I've made the decision to let something go. I think the version of me a few years ago would have been horrified. I would have lost sleep over it. And I made the decision, and I'm still at peace with it. And I'm just like, yeah, okay, bring it on. That's just the way it is. And it's what my capacity, my bandwidth is right now.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that.
Yes, it's taken me a while to get to that point. I mean, I laugh when I think sometimes that I actually moved cities to get out of doing the PTA.
I'm not even joking.
Genuinely. I uprooted my entire family.
Oh my God, it's like a PTA
moved
mafia.
Schools so I didn't have to be chair of the PTA anymore.
You went into witness protection.
Yeah, and then I came back when a good enough time had passed that I wasn't going to be like.
No way.
I mean, and we're joking, but but actually, there is a huge element of that. It was in my decision. Because I was like, I can't let them down by just saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I will have to have a really good reason. I'm going to have to move my entire family.
Oh, I resonate with that one. I totally get it. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Too funny.
So with your coaching, because obviously you set the podcast up. And so initially that was about your own curiosity and understanding. And then you coach as well now, don't you? So how did all that come about?
So I don't really do any coaching one-to-one that much anymore. A few clients, but not so much because, again, bandwidth, capacity. So I was doing it. I was training already to be a wellbeing coach. And then obviously all the ADHD stuff. And then it all kind of like evolved. And then I was doing the podcast, created a community, wrote a book. There was a lot.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
In typical ADHD style, there was a lot. And the the book came out last July, which I was so glad to write and so proud to write, but it's probably taken me nearly a year to get over the promotion of it, the writing of it, the handing it in. Yay,
This
there
book,
it is.
fantastic. Everybody should buy it.
Because it was a year writing, then we went into editing, and then within about 5 months of editing, we went straight into promo. And when you're publishing with a publisher, the publisher puts lots of pressure on you to, pre-sales and all of that. And I was just on. I couldn't have a moment off. I couldn't have a moment off the podcast, off Instagram, because it all fed into one. It was just like, it was this sort of knock-on effect. And it's only now, a year later, that I'm like, oh, I think I've just been sort of like burning out slowly. And so, hence the decision I was just talking about. I am really reflecting on my, burnout, boundaries, capacity, all of that, my bandwidth right now, and making decisions about how I want to show up while also protecting myself.
Yeah.
And so for me, having these kind of conversations are like, great, okay, I can get out to new audience. I'm helping more people, educating, directing people back to things that I'm already doing, like the podcast, my book's already written, but trying not to put too much more on my plate right now because I don't think I've got that in me anymore. And that's okay, because I've been really, really busy over the past 6 years building something. And, you're allowed to have a breather. You're allowed to sort of press pause on things. And I think that's important, especially when it's your health that's involved.
And sometimes it is that question of why? Why do I want to do this? I had to make a decision not to do something this week. And what I tend to do is I'll go, oh, well, I should do it. I'll say yes.
Good, yeah.
And then the next day I go, oh crap, I don't want to do it, and I can't really, and it's going to put loads of pressure on me and my family, and now I have to say no. So I go from having an opportunity just to not get into complicated situation. I nearly always say yes and then have to disappoint, which is hugely annoying. And I hope one day I will get to the point where I don't say yes in the first place, because and I had to I said, why do I want to do that? Why exactly? Is it something that for me, or is it for somebody else?
Maybe it's dopamine as well. It's the hit of, because I know when I did that thing with Hannah, one of my top traits was, well, it was empathy, positivity, ideas, like overwhelmed with ideas. I have an idea. I have 50,000 ideas a day, and I want to execute all of them. And then I have to go, I can't. And sometimes when an offer comes in, it's that, oh yeah. And then the next day you go, oh, actually, I can't do that. Do you experience that, Kate?
Oh God, all the time. Oh my goodness me. My projects file in ChatGPT is never ending. And I'm like, oh my God. I have ideas all the time, but now my ideas are, and this is how I preface it with chat. I go, please make sure that you understand that I am exhausted, burnt out, and I really don't want to have to do anymore, show up anymore, but I really want to help, still build awareness. And that's the preface. But what do you think about this idea? and so, you can't stop the ideas from flowing. And I think it's good to be able to channel them somewhere, whether it's a notebook or Google Docs, whether it's AI, getting it out, letting it flow, letting it have its moment, create and be imaginative. I love all of that, and have it somewhere, because we will at one point feel ready for whatever that idea is. But you're right, it's knowing. It's like, oh, there's a little dopamine, thing, whether it's, I'm just going to Google this thing, I'm going to look at that, I'm going to have a little, brainstorm. But knowing what season you're in as well is so important. And, for me, I'm thinking, right, summer's coming up, kids are going to be breaking up, my daughter's doing her A-levels, stuff's going on throughout the summer. I'm going to pull back a little bit. And so use that time as to harvest these ideas and really think about how I want to show up come September and October. So it's allowing yourself, not repressing, not pushing them down. Let yourself have a bit of fun, but without the pressure to then have to do it. actually execute them. And sometimes we do want to execute them, but sometimes we just like to have the idea and allow that little dopamine kind of like, buzz to happen, and then we settle down again.
How would you explain to somebody how they know which season they're in if they don't know how they can recognize that within themselves? And
Yeah,
what
I think
tricks would you give somebody with ADHD?
in general or just with the season.
Well, the seasons, I
Yeah.
think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, I think you can look at it from a hormonal perspective. So I definitely see myself, it's whether you want to call it this autumn season, I don't know, but I'm definitely not feeling as bright and sprightly as I normally do. But I have moments. Where I'm like, oh, let's lean into that. See where you are. Again, you might be, in a burnout cycle. You might have just been coming out of one. You might be recovering. You might be sort of really just trying to, I guess, try not to let one happen. Where your energy is, where your excitement is, where your sleep's at, where your mood's at, where your obligations are. People, family members, what's going on? Are you caring for an older parent? Have you got kids with needs that need, who need you? Is it the time, if you've got parents needing you, kids, financial stuff going on, maybe stuff going on with a partner, is it a time to launch a whole new business and do something that's really going to be taxing on your brain and your nervous system? Or maybe stuff has happened and you're kind of in this like spring season. You might have got, whether it's divorce or maybe you have finished one job, you've gone through, some time off and, whatever that might be. And you might be re-energized, ready to start something new. So it's just being able to have that time just to like check in. And again, I say, whether you want to do it on voice notes, journaling, just allow yourself a bit of space to reflect and verbally process. I think that a lot of us are very good verbal processors, and sometimes it's all going on in our heads and it's all so much. And then when we speak it, it's like, oh, actually, I don't really want to do that thing.
Yes.
Or I'm feeling really like this and I don't know why. And then the shoulds come out and all of that. So it's just, I would say, giving ourselves space before we do anything extreme, giving our space to process, to reflect, to get curious, whether that's with a therapist, a friend, however you want to do it. Because we do uncover things about ourselves that we didn't know were there. And when we hear the words should, I should be doing this, or need to be doing that, or I ought to be doing this, we know there's something going on there. And so that's just an indicator in itself.
Yeah.
What would you say ADHD burnout looks like for somebody that might not recognize it within themselves?
It's quite subtle, actually. I think, you can have that sort of big crescendo of like just complete paralysis and collapsing, physical and mental, where you're sort of in this sort of disassociative state. I know it can be very extreme for some people, but for many of us, it's just this pushing. Then you get the flu, or you get tonsillitis, or you get a migraine, or you just not sleeping well. It's just like I said, it's like this low hum until it just builds up a little bit more momentum, and you're more snappy with people. You don't want to see certain friends that maybe you would have liked to. You feel like you've lost a bit of joy or creativity, or you don't even know what you like anymore. What fills you up? You suddenly just go, I don't even know. You don't even have the words. So it doesn't have to be this big melodramatic situation. It can just be like you have nothing left to give. You just feel like you're pouring from an empty cup. And that's kind of what it feels like for me. I've never really had like a big dramatic burnout, but I can just feel it building. And whether it's needing just to go and have a day on your own, a week on your own, like you say, go to sleep, but it's also about stripping things back and finding yourself again, I think is probably, what I would try and suggest. Just finding the opportunity, finding those moments where you can discover who you are and what lights you up and what feeds you. And many of us, especially midlife women, have just been doing so much for so many other people that we don't even know anymore. We're just on this autopilot.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think that it's just been brilliant to take this time to actually talk about things that I suppose some people haven't yet got to thinking about, and maybe this conversation has sparked a little bit of curiosity in somebody listening, or given somebody permission to give themselves a little bit of space. I've certainly found it absolutely fascinating, and I could literally talk to you all day. I'll have to go and listen to 5 hours worth of podcasts now.
I focus, Susie.
I wouldn't advise that. You probably just need to focus on that, but yeah, maybe in a few days.
Can we just finish with a few tips that you would give people with ADHD?
See, that I struggle with, because I'm just like, oh, there's so many. But I mean, I'm not, this is not a plug, but I would say, like, my book, that's what I wrote my book about, it's the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Toolkit, for that exact reason, because we focus on things like anxiety and the nervous system and burnout and hormones, but we also move to this more sort of spiritual lifestyle well-being place of like understanding your purpose and your potential and creativity and leaning into joy and discovering who you are and your authenticity. And so if you want the tips and the hacks, go to TikTok and find somebody that will do all these snazzy videos. But for me, there's nuance, there's processing, there's conversation. And that's why I wrote the book, because there were so many conversations that I'd had on the podcast that I was like, right, how do I get this to women where they can put this into practical, different things, whether it is, I mean, for me, the biggest thing that I lean on every single day without fail is movement. Going outside, outdoor movement, walk my dog. I have to have a walk every single day. And I lean into my breath. I have to, because I'm one of those people that will do a million things all in one go. And before 11 o'clock, I've emailed, done socials, checked podcasts, X, Y, and Z, not breathed, had a couple of coffees, and suddenly realize that I've got like tightness in my shoulders, my breath is like short, and I'm feeling really sort of activated. And so what I do is I recognize this now, and I go into like sort of like some breath work, a couple of minutes every few hours to really try and settle my nervous system, because we don't want to get to the end of the day and then do that. It's almost like, no, it's a little bit too late. Yes, do it, but it's a couple of minutes every few hours just to calm and resettle will make a really big difference to the version of you later on in the day, when you've got to deal with kids, family, partners, all of that. So yes, it is always being aware of your nervous system health and that regulation and calming your nervous system, I would say, so you feel more regulated and more settled and grounded, because that version of you will, I guess, thank you for it at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I think that's for everybody as well, isn't it?
Yes.
And especially and mothers and women, and it's giving yourself permission, and it's tiny little things, isn't it, that make a massive difference to how you move through the day, and how your body responds and is at the end of every day. So it's brilliant. Yeah.
Give yourself those buffers, like try not to book yourself in, back to back to back. Recognize, plans in the evening. What's that going to contribute? What's that version of you the next day going to, need? If you've had a crazy day, many of us do, the next day, what can you do for yourself so you can recover from the day before? Yeah. So you're always, and again, it is exhausting. And that is the tax of being neurodivergent, that you are constantly trying to reconfigure and recalibrate. And then some people can just keep going and then they're still fine. Many of us can't with our sensitive nervous systems. And so we have to find ways to claim back, our energy, our battery, our emotions, whatever that might be. And that's just the price we have to pay to operate in this world at the moment, when it's just so fast paced and doing is celebrated.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. Like Sue said, this isn't just for people with neurodiversity, not just for women. I know my husband will be able to use a lot of what's been said in this conversation as well.
Yeah, and we'll put links to podcast, the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Podcast, and your brilliant book, the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Toolkit, on the show notes as well. And thank you so much, Kate. It's been brilliant to meet you.
Thank you. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this More Yourself episode. And this is more my chance to bring you additional wisdom to help you step into more authenticity with this new understanding and awareness through a more neurodivergent lens. So I really hope that you found today's episode helpful. And you can always find more resources on my website, which is adhdwomenswellbeing.co.uk. You'll find free resources, workshops, different things that to help you along your ADHD journey, whether it's nervous system regulation, whether it's help grounding or understanding your potential. I've tried to include all the different areas of ADHD within this ecosystem of how it manifests in everyday life. And you can also find more content on my socials as well. So always go onto Instagram, which is ADHD Women's Wellbeing Pod. You can find me on TikTok and you can find me on Substack and LinkedIn. I will see you on another Thursday episode where we always have a fantastic and inspirational guest expert helping us and guiding us and supporting us on this late diagnosed ADHD journey. Take care and I'll see you all very soon.